Hi guys, I welcome you all to the next lecture in our anthropology series. So yesterday we had started the discussion on single factor, multifactor and polygenic inheritance. I had told you what single factor inheritance was. Single factor inheritance, basically I'll just give you a recap of it. So in single factor inheritance we were saying that one gene, one phenotypic trait. It was one gene was leading to one phenotypic trait in a human. So it was working on the Mendelian inheritance principles. Okay, so it was working on Mendelian laws, and that was precisely the single factor inheritance, where we were only looking at the genetic aspect of any phenotypic trait. Phenotypic trait is the physical expression, right, in the human beings or in any other also organisms, but here we are just talking about human genetics, so we are restricting our discussion on the human related aspects, right, or human genetics. So one gene is leading to one phenotypic trait in the human. Okay, so this was single factor inheritance. After this we had started about what is a polygenic inheritance. So in polygenic inheritance, the word polygenic, okay, polygenic means poly means more than one and genic means related to genes. So we were talking that more than one gene was contributing to one phenotypic trait. So हमने single factor inheritance में कुछ we were understanding the concept like this: one gene, one phenotypic trait. But in polygenic we were saying that more than one gene was giving rise to one phenotypic trait. Okay, so this can also be in the case of complex traits. Okay, like if you want to take an example, you can say intelligence. Okay, IQ जो होता है, ठीक है, then your height, your color, ठीक है, your weight, ठीक है, these are certain traits, your cholesterol, fat deposition, these are all certain you can say certain phenotypic traits that are not directly controlled by one gene, or it has an effect of more than one genes, and you cannot easily show which gene has how much effect. So it is, that is why it is polygenetic inheritance is also known as quantitative inheritance, because quantity more than matlab so many genes contribute to one phenotypic trait. Having said so, we had already discussed about the concept of norm of reaction also. So what was norm of reaction? That means when so many genes are leading to one phenotypic trait, so that is why you know that there will be different recombinations, there will be so many permutation and combinations that can be done on those so many different genes. So क्या होता है when parents give their or pass on their genes to their offsprings, so and in that also there is so many quantity of genes that are at play. So obviously if they recombine and make newer combinations, so a lot of that range, the so called range of those you can say the range of combinations, range of recombinations are present. So in that range, in that so called range of recombinations, there could be any one type that you can inherit, right? So that becomes the norm of reaction. That means how much range of options are there, how many range of recombinations are there. Ultimately आपका height तो it is going to be one ना, but there are so many options. You can be tall heighted person, short heighted person, average heighted person. Average may be what height you actually attain. So what is that? That is a range. For example एक range होती है जो usual range मानी जाती है 150 to 170 centimeters of height. इसके बीच में what is your height actually? So that becomes the norm of reaction. अगर हम height के केस में लेकर चलते हैं, this is norm of reaction, and this is just an example. So मान लो your height is 164 centimeter. So there were so many combinations, but your actual height is 164 centimeters, right? So in that norm of reaction, in that option or range of options, what you actually attain is also partially determined by the environment. So therefore, even though polygenic inheritance talks about quantitative inheritance or a lot of genes giving rise to one phenotypic trait in a human, but even then you see the actual, you can say the actual the actual phenotypic trait is a lot dependent on the environment also, because आपका for example the norm of reaction was 150 to 170, let us keep that same only, right? So that means an average Indian, we can say, attains a height of around 150 to 180. Let's say 150 to 180 is average Indian height. I am not too sure about this number, I am just giving you an idea. Okay? So what happens is, let us suppose you attain the height of 165 centimeters. Okay? So what is this? This is maybe because you can say, so it is somewhere in the middle. Let me change the number, guys, because I don't want to take an average height. Let me take an extreme of a value. Okay, so let me take a value of 175 centimeter. ठीक है? So अगर हम इसका average लेते हैं, so average would be somewhere around 165 centimeters, right? If you have to be an average Indian person, you will be somewhere around 165, or you can say 160 to 170 would be the average height. ठीक है? But you are slightly taller than that. So what is the reasons? First reason would be definitely your genes, and there is quantity of genes that are playing a role in that, because height is a polygenic trait. So there are large amount of genes which are additively acting and giving you that height, right? So one thing is that. The second thing is your socioeconomic background. Apart from the tall genes that you got, maybe the nutrition requirement for you to attain that optimal height, or the जीन का एक इलास्टिसिटी है, ठीक है? दैट मीन्स वो जीन अपना एक ऑप्टिमम बेस्ट अटेन कर सकता है, बट टू अटेन दैट ऑप्टिमम बेस्ट द एनवायरमेंट ऑल्सो शुड बी conducive, and you got that also. So that means in polygenic inheritance we had talked about how environment also plays a part. So I hope you've understood now, and there should not be much of confusion in this. Now we are going to start with the okay, we were talking about, okay, so polygenic inheritance I told you, ठीक है? इसके examples we had seen. Okay, so polygenic, just let me revise it with you. So expression of polygenes is greatly influenced by environmental conditions, we have talked about it. The genotype sets the range, ठीक है? जिसके बारे में we were talking about the norm of reaction, that is the range, and in that range, ठीक है, what actually you attain has also to do with the environmental influence, right? So that we had talked about. Okay, and isme you can say all those complex traits like intelligence, depression, schizophrenia, skin color, height, they are polygenic traits, and they have environmental component as well. ठीक है? environment में क्या आता है? diet is one, ठीक है, your health, your social status, ठीक है, your environment in which you live, all these things are the part of environment. ठीक है? physical environment here I was talking about, the physical environment in which you live. So all these things are the environmental component. ठीक है? So society is also a part of environment in this case. So there is certain examples that I've shown you here. Now let's move on to the multifactorial inheritance. Okay, so basically in single factor inheritance and polygenic inheritance, what we were talking more about was the effect of genes, right? Genes के बारे में we were talking more about genes and their influence or their role in inheritance. But in multifactor, as the term itself, you can just from the term understand that multifactor is something which talks more about different factors, and in this different factors we can say genes plus environment plus other chance factors. ठीक है? So देखो, multifactor में you are making the idea or the study a more holistic one, or more broader one, where you believe that not only genes but your environment plays a part in inheritance. And there are certain chance factors also. Chance factors क्या होते हैं? Which are not a regular part of the thing, but sometimes with chance something can happen. ठीक है? Maybe certain mutation can happen. Mutation is not something which is going to happen every day, right? It is going to be with a chance, or there could be some genetic drift. So anything, any chance factor can be there, right? So this is multifactorial inheritance. So in multifactorial inheritance, it refers to that traits, any trait that are caused by combination of inherited, environmental and stochastic factors. ये हो गए आपके chance factors, right? So it differs from polygenetic inheritance, because why? Polygenetic में basically we were saying quantitative inheritance is there. That means more than one gene additively expresses itself into a phenotypic character. But in multifactorial we are saying it is genes, environment and chance factors that result into a phenotypic trait. So I hope you understand. वो अलग बात है कि in polygenetic inheritance we were talking about the environmental effect, and many times the words polygenetic inheritance and multifactorial inheritance are used interchangeably, but there is a minute difference, and that is what precisely I wanted to cover in this lecture, because had I done it yesterday it would most probably it would have been more chaotic to understand. So हमने क्या बोला? In polygenetic we were saying basically it is about the genetic inheritance, and then of course there is a role of environment, because environment से बाहर your genes do not they do not interplay, right? Because nature versus nurture में हमने precisely we had studied this only, that both nature and nurture has a role on our genes. But in polygenetic inheritance हम genes की बात ज़्यादा कर रहे हैं. But in multifactor we are saying that genes, environment and chance factors, all of them together show a phenotypic trait. ठीक है? So there, for example, इसकी example if we have to take, you take the example of coronary artery disease or heart attacks, anything like that. So basically क्या होता है? It is a genetic thing. That means it is partially explained by genetics. It has to run in the families, but if it has to express itself, it needs to have that kind of a environment or lifestyle. ठीक है? So if the disease is actually going to surface in a family, for example there is a family of 5 people, ठीक है? They all have a risk of having coronary artery disease, but now who has it? Or all of them have it, ठीक है? It depends upon the environment, the lifestyle, the kind of food that they eat, and on that the chance factor also. That means let us suppose that everybody was having the same kind of food, ठीक है? Everybody had the risk of having the disease, but उसमें से भी फिर सिर्फ एक को होती है, that is a chance factor, ठीक है? So in multifactorial inheritance we talk about more you can say holistic, wide understanding of the the inheritance of any trait, ठीक है? So I hope you've understood this multifactorial inheritance. You have understood the differences between polygenetic and multifactorial, and you have understood what the single factor inheritance was. So today I will restrict my topic to this much only. Tomorrow we'll start with the lethal, sublethal, and that will be the last part of this chapter, and then after that we'll start with the next topic, right? So guys, if you did like it, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.